Close your eyes and let your mind drift northward, beyond the familiar warmth of hearth and home, beyond the last flickering lights of civilization, into the vast expanse where ancient winds carry whispers of forgotten gods and eternal halls. If you find this journey soothing, consider subscribing for more tales from the mists of time. But for now, simply let yourself be carried into the realm where warriors find their final rest, the gates of the north. In the depths of winter, when snow falls like silence itself across the Scandinavian landscape, there exists a threshold between worlds that the ancient Norse understood better than perhaps any people who have ever lived. They knew that death was not a wall, but a doorway, not an ending, but a crossing from one realm to another, and in their understanding lay a profound truth about courage, honor, and the eternal nature of the human spirit. The northern lights dance across these ancient skies like the very breath of gods, casting their ethereal glow upon a world where every fjord, every mountain, every wind-swept plain holds the memory of those who came before. Here, in this land of ice and fire, of midnight sun and endless winter, the Norse people looked up at the aurora and saw not merely natural phenomena, but the bridge that carried souls from the world of the living to the halls of the eternal. Imagine yourself standing on a high cliff, watching the sea crash against ancient rocks below, feeling the bite of wind that has traveled across frozen wastes to reach you. This is the landscape that shaped a people's understanding of life and death, a landscape so harsh and beautiful that it could only have been crafted by gods who understood both struggle and triumph, both suffering and glory. The Norse did not fear death as an unknown darkness, for they had gazed into the heart of winter and found there not emptiness, but transformation. In their cosmology, 9 realms stretched across the branches and roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, each realm connected to the others by invisible threads of fate and purpose. Midgard, the Middle Earth, where humans dwelt, was but one small part of this vast tapestry, and death was simply the moment when a soul stepped from one thread to another, from one realm to the next, guided by powers beyond mortal comprehension. The wind that blows across these northern lands carries with it the echo of ancient voices, the whispers of those who understood that every breath drawn in life was borrowed from the eternal, and that every heartbeat was a drumbeat counting down to the moment when the great journey would begin. They lived not in fear of this journey, but in preparation for it, knowing that how one lived would determine where one's soul would find its rest in the vast halls of the afterlife. As you drift deeper into this northern reverie, feel the presence of something greater than yourself, something that watches and weighs, something that sees beyond the veil of mortality into the true nature of courage and honor. This is the realm where destiny is not a chain that binds, but a thread that guides, woven by hands that have shaped the fate of gods and mortals alike since the beginning of time itself. The weavers of fate. Beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, where the well of fate bubbles with waters that reflect not what is, but what was, and what must come to pass, 3 figures sit in eternal contemplation, their fingers working ceaselessly at threads that shimmer with the essence of every life that has ever been, or ever will be. These are the Norns, the weavers of destiny, and in their ancient hands lies the power to determine the course of every soul from birth to death and beyond. Ord, she who embodies what was, draws from the well waters that hold the memory of every deed, every choice, every moment of courage or cowardice that has shaped the world. Her thread is golden and strong, woven from the accumulated weight of all that has come before. And when she pulls upon it, the very foundations of reality respond to her touch. Beside her, Verdandi, keeper of the present moment, weaves with silver thread that catches and holds the fleeting instant where past becomes future, where choice becomes consequence, where life meets death in the eternal dance of becoming. And then there is Skuld, youngest and most mysterious of the three, her thread dark as the space between stars, shot through with possibilities that glimmer like distant lights in an infinite sky. She weaves what must be, but her patterns are not rigid chains of predetermined fate. Rather, they are the framework within which courage can flourish, where honor can transform mere existence into legend, where a warrior's death can become a doorway to immortality. These three ancient beings work in perfect harmony, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm that matches the heartbeat of the cosmos itself, speaking in languages older than words, weaving patterns more complex than any mortal mind could comprehend. Yet for all their power, for all their knowledge of things that were and things to come, they are bound by the same cosmic laws that govern gods and mortals alike. For even the weavers of fate cannot escape the tapestry they create. When a child is born, the Norns examine the threads that surround that new life, seeing how it connects to all other lives, how its choices will ripple outward through time like stones cast into still water. They do not decree that life's path with cruel indifference, but rather they recognize the potential that lies sleeping in every soul, the capacity for greatness or failure, for love or hatred, for courage or cowardice, that will ultimately determine that soul's destination in the halls of the afterlife. The threads they weave are not chains but guidelines, not prisons but pathways, and within the framework of fate lies infinite possibility for those brave enough to seize it. A warrior who dies with weapon in hand, fighting not for glory, but for something greater than himself, creates ripples in the tapestry that the Norns recognize and honor, while one who turns from battle or lives only for selfish gain finds his thread growing thin and gray, leading not to the golden halls of honor, but to quieter, darker places where souls must reckon with the choices they made in life. As you contemplate these ancient weavers, feel the weight of your own thread in the great tapestry sense, how every choice you make sends tremors through the web of fate, connecting you to all who have come before and all who will come after. The Norns do not judge, they simply weave what is given to them. But in their patient work lies the promise that courage matters, that honor echoes through eternity, that a life lived with purpose becomes part of something infinitely greater than itself. The death of a warrior. The battlefield grows quiet now, the clash of steel and the cries of the wounded fading into a silence deeper than any the living world can know. Snow begins to fall, each flake a gentle benediction upon the fallen, covering the evidence of struggle with nature's own shroud of peace. Here, in this moment between heartbeats, between the last breath and whatever comes after, a warrior's story reaches its crescendo, not with the violent ending that might have been expected, but with a transformation as gentle as dawn breaking over a winter landscape. His name was Eric Ironbeard, though names matter little now, in this liminal space where mortal identity begins to dissolve into something larger and more eternal. He lies upon ground that no longer feels cold beneath him, his weathered hands still gripping the sword that served him faithfully through 30 winters of raiding and battle. His eyes fixed upon a sky that seemed somehow larger than it was moments before, painted with colors that exist nowhere in the realm of the living. The pain that racked his body is gone now, replaced by a curious lightness, as though the very weight of mortality has begun to lift from his shoulders, like mist rising from a lake at dawn. He remembers the spear thrust that felled him, remembers the face of the young Saxon who delivered the blow. But these memories seem distant now, like events from someone else's dream, important once, but no longer relevant to what he is becoming. Around him, the battle continues, its grim dance, but Eric can no longer quite hear it, as though he exists now in a bubble of perfect silence, where only the most essential truths can penetrate. He becomes aware that he is not alone in this strange twilight between worlds, that other shapes lie still upon the frozen ground, some breathing their last, others having already crossed the threshold. He now approaches all of them suspended in this moment of cosmic transition. The snow continues to fall, but each flake that touches his skin brings not cold but warmth, not weight but lift. And gradually, Eric begins to understand that what he took for snow is something else entirely, something that sparkles with its own inner light and whispers secrets in languages he has never learned but somehow comprehends perfectly. These are not mere ice crystals, but the very essence of transformation, the physical manifestation of passage from one state of being to another. His breathing slows, then stops, but rather than the darkness he might have expected, Eric finds himself surrounded by a soft, pearl-like radiance that seems to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. In this light, he sees his life not as a series of separate events, but as a single coherent story, each battle fought and each price choice made now revealed as part of a greater pattern that he could never have perceived while trapped within the limitations of mortal perspective. The ground beneath him begins to feel less solid, more like water than earth, and Eric realizes that he is gently sinking through it, not downward into darkness, but somehow upward into light, as though the very concepts of up and down have lost their meaning in this place where physical laws bend to accommodate truths more fundamental than gravity or time. His sword falls from nerveless fingers. Above him, the sky opens like the petals of an enormous flower, revealing depths of blue and gold and pearl that stretch beyond the boundaries of sight. And in those depths he glimpses movement, graceful figures that approach with the inevitability of sunrise and the gentleness of a mother's touch. These are the ones he has heard about in stories told around winter fires, the choosers of the slain, the daughters of Odin who ride between worlds to gather those whose courage has earned them a place in the eternal halls, the ride of the Valkyries. They come not with the thunder of war horses or the clash of weapons, but with a sound like wind through autumn leaves, like water over smooth stones, like the distant singing of voices too beautiful for mortal ears to fully comprehend. The Valkyrie who approaches Eric moves with a grace that suggests she has never known the weight of physical form, never been bound by the limitations that constrain mortal flesh. Yet there is nothing otherworldly or alien. In her presence, only a profound sense of coming home after a long journey. Her name is Sigrun, and she has been choosing the slain for longer than human memory can reach, yet each soul she guides across the threshold between worlds brings her the same sense of purpose and wonder that she felt when Odin first charged her with this sacred duty. She sees in Eric not just another fallen warrior, but a complete story, a life lived with intention and courage, a thread in the great tapestry that deserves to be woven into something eternal and beautiful. As she kneels beside him, her touch brings not the cold of death, but the warmth of recognition, the comfort of being truly seen and understood for perhaps the first time in his mortal existence. Eric's eyes, which had been growing dim with approaching death, suddenly blaze with renewed clarity as he looks upon this being who exists beyond the boundaries of ordinary experience, yet somehow feels as familiar as his own reflection. "Eric Ironbeard," she says, and her voice carries the music of wind chimes and distant thunder, of waves breaking on unseen shores and eagles crying in mountain air. "Your time in Midgard is complete, but your true journey is just beginning. Will you come with me to the hall where warriors feast eternal, where courage is rewarded with glory that never fades?" He tries to speak, but finds that words are no longer necessary in this place where thoughts and feelings flow between souls like water between cupped hands. His answer rises from the depths of his being without need for voice or breath, a resonance of acceptance and gratitude that Sigrun receives like music perfectly harmonized. She smiles, and in that smile is all the warmth of summer sunlight, all the promise of adventures yet to come. Gently, she helps him to his feet, though the concepts of standing and sitting seem somehow different here, more like states of being than physical positions. And he feels no sadness at leaving it behind, only gratitude for the service it provided during his time in the world of flesh and bone and mortal limitation. Other Valkyries move across the battlefield with the same purposeful grace, each one tending to souls whose moment of crossing has arrived. Some warriors, like Eric, who died with weapons in hand, others who showed courage in different ways, healers who braved danger to tend the wounded leaders, who made impossible choices to protect their people, even some who died far from battle, but whose hearts held the same fierce loyalty to truth and honor that marks the truly brave. Together, this gathering of souls begins to rise, lifted not by any effort of their own, but by the inexorable pull of destiny fulfilled, of stories completed, and new chapters ready to begin. The battlefield falls away beneath them, becoming first a distant memory, and then something less than memory, while ahead and above the sky opens to reveal wonders that no mortal eye has seen, realms where different laws apply and where courage finds its ultimate reward. The journey through the sky is both instantaneous and eternal, a passage through dimensions that exist beyond the simple geography of the mortal world. Eric sees the 9 realms spread out below and around him like a vast flower with Yggdrasil at its center, each realm pulsing with its own unique life and purpose, connected to all the others by bridges of light and rivers of song that carry information and energy between worlds with the efficiency of thought itself. Beyond the mists that separate the realm of the living from the countless other dimensions, where different forms of existence play out their eternal dramas, and all the while Sigrun's presence beside him provides an anchor of familiarity in this ocean of wonders, a reminder that however vast and strange these new realms might be, he is not lost but found, not ending but beginning. The golden hall of Valhalla. Before them now rises a structure so magnificent that Eric's newly expanded consciousness struggles to encompass its full glory, though he senses that what he perceives is only the smallest fraction of its true splendor, filtered through awareness, still adjusting to existence beyond mortal limitations. Valhalla stretches across the horizon like a mountain range made of light and intention, its walls built from shields that gleam with the accumulated valor of every warrior who has ever faced death with courage. Its roof thatched, not with straw, but with spears that point toward infinity, like prayers made manifest in golden metal. The hall has 540 doors, each one wide enough for 800 armed warriors to march through side by side. Yet even these impossible dimensions seem small compared to the sense of infinite space that radiates from within, as though the building exists not just in 3 dimensions, but in all possible dimensions simultaneously, expanding to accommodate every soul who has earned a place within its walls, while never losing the intimate warmth that makes it truly a home rather than merely a monument. Above the great hall, eagles wheel in endless circles, their cries echoing with the voices of heroes whose stories have become legend, while the roof itself seems to ripple and shift like water. Made of light, each shield reflecting not just the surrounding glory, but the deeds that earned its original bearer a place in this eternal assembly. The spears that form the thatch catch and hold the radiance that flows from within the hall, creating patterns of light and shadow that tell stories more complex than any saga ever composed by mortal poets. As Eric approaches the nearest door, accompanied by Sigrun and the other souls chosen from the battlefield, he hears the sound that has drawn warriors across the centuries like a beacon calling ships to safe harbor. The sound of voices raised in songs of triumph and brotherhood, of laughter that holds no edge of mockery or cruelty, but only the pure joy of spirits who have found their true home at last, of conversation that flows like honeymead from cup to cup, carrying wisdom and wonder in equal measure. The doors of Valhalla do not open so much as dissolve, like mist before the morning sun, revealing an interior that defies every assumption about space and architecture that Eric formed during his mortal existence. The hall stretches away in all directions, yet simultaneously feels intimate and welcoming, filled with countless tables, where warriors from every age and nation sit in perfect harmony, their earthly conflicts forgotten in the face of shared understanding about what truly matters in the cosmic order. Benches line tables that seem to extend beyond the reach of sight, yet Eric somehow knows that no warrior who seeks a place will find himself without one that the hall expands to accommodate. Each new arrival, while maintaining the perfect proportions that make it feel like the hall where he always belonged, even before he knew such a place existed. The wood of these benches and tables gleams with the warm patina of age and use, yet shows no sign of wear or damage, as though the very concept of entropy has no power in this place where all things exist in their perfect eternal form. Above them, the ceiling soars to heights that seem to touch the very dome of the sky, supported by pillars carved from single trees that must have grown in forests, where gods walked as commonly as deer, each pillar telling its own story in relief work so intricate and alive that the figures seem ready to step down from their wooden prisons and join the celebration that surrounds them. Between these pillars, banners hang that bear the devices of every noble house and worthy clan that has ever produced a hero, their colors bright as the day they were first unfurled, untouched by the passage of centuries or the fading that claims all mortal achievements. The light that fills Valhalla comes from no visible source, yet illuminates every corner without creating shadows, a warm golden radiance that seems to emanate from the joy and camaraderie of the assembled warriors themselves, growing brighter when stories are told well, when songs reach their most stirring crescendos, when bonds of friendship are forged or renewed across the infinite expanse of the hall. This light reveals faces from every era of human history, Vikings and Roman Celts and Saxons warriors, from lands whose names Eric has never heard, but whose courage he recognizes instantly in their bearing and the clarity of their eyes. At the high table visible from every point in the hall, yet somehow intimate and approachable, despite the reverence it commands, sits Odin Allfather himself, his ravens Hugin and Munin perched upon the back of his throne, his wolves, Jerry and Freki, lying contentedly at his feet, his single eye surveying his assembled warriors with the satisfaction of a father watching his children achieve greatness beyond his wildest hopes. The empty socket where his other eye once rested seems not like a wound, but like a window into wisdom too vast for any single organ of perception to contain. A reminder of the sacrifices that true knowledge demands and the rewards that such sacrifices ultimately bring. Odin, Allfather of the fallen. The presence of the Allfather fills Valhalla not with the oppressive weight of absolute authority, but with the warm, encompassing embrace of perfect understanding, the sense that here stands a being who has walked every path that leads to wisdom, who has sacrificed everything that can be sacrificed in pursuit of knowledge and truth, who has earned the right to guide and judge, not through conquest or inheritance, but through the accumulation of experience that spans the breadth of creation itself. Odin's remaining eye holds depths that reflect not just the immediate present, but all of time simultaneously, past and future existing as a single eternal moment in which every choice and its consequences play out in perfect clarity. When his gaze falls upon a newly arrived warrior like Eric, it carries no sense of judgment or evaluation, but rather recognition, the acknowledgement of one who has traveled a difficult path and arrived at its proper destination, the welcome of a father greeting a son who has finally come home after long wandering in far countries. The ravens that accompany him everywhere are more than mere birds, more even than the supernatural messengers that carry news from across the 9 realms to their master's ears. Hugin and Munin represent the dual nature of consciousness itself, thought and memory working in perfect harmony to create understanding, the endless cycle of perception and recollection that transforms raw experience into wisdom. They watch the assembled warriors with eyes that hold the accumulated knowledge of every battle ever fought, every act of courage ever performed, every moment when a mortal soul transcended its limitations to touch something eternal. At Odin's feet, the wolves, Jerry and Freki, embody the hunger that drives all seeking, the appetite for truth and experience that can never be fully satisfied, but must always be fed, the predatory focus that allows one to cut through illusion and deception to reach the essential core of any matter. Yet, for all their fierce intensity, they are content here in Valhalla, their hunger temporarily sated by the knowledge that they dwell in the presence of one who has achieved the ultimate goal of all seeking, the integration of all knowledge into a single coherent understanding. The Allfather rises from his throne as Eric approaches, guided by Sigrun to his place among the Einherjar, the chosen slain, and his movement carries the fluid grace of one who has mastered every form of combat, every discipline of mind and spirit, every art that contributes to the making of a complete warrior. His spear Gungnir, which never misses its target, rests easily in his hand, not as a weapon of war, but as a symbol of purpose, so clear and unwavering that it cannot help but find its mark, whatever that mark might be. "Welcome, Eric Ironbeard," Odin says, and his voice carries harmonics that resonate not just in the air, but in the very essence of those who hear it. Awakening echoes of recognition that speak to the deepest levels of the soul. "You have fought well in the world below, and now you shall feast well in the world above. But know that your battles are not ended, only transformed. Here you will train and grow strong. Here you will learn the arts of war that transcend the merely physical. Here you will become part of something greater than any single warrior could ever be alone." The words sink into Eric's consciousness like stones dropped into deep water, creating ripples of understanding that spread outward through his entire being. He begins to comprehend that Valhalla is not merely a reward for valor, but a preparation for something even greater, a cosmic conflict that will require every skill, every ounce of courage, every fragment of wisdom that can be gathered from across the breadth of existence. The warriors assembled here are not just enjoying eternal rest, but undergoing eternal training, honing themselves into weapons capable of standing against forces that would unmake creation itself. Odin's sacrifice of his eye for wisdom, his hanging upon Yggdrasil for 9 days and nights to win the knowledge of the runes, his constant questing for every scrap of lore and understanding that might prove useful in the final battle. All of these legendary deeds take on new meaning in this context. The Allfather is not gathering warriors for conquest or glory, but for survival, for the preservation of everything that makes existence meaningful in the face of entropy and chaos that would reduce all things to meaningless void. Yet even this cosmic responsibility does not diminish the warmth of his welcome or the genuine affection he shows for each warrior who earns a place at his table. He is father as much as general teacher, as much as commander, and in his presence even the humblest warrior feels elevated, transformed from a merely individual into part of a brotherhood that transcends death itself, bound together by shared purpose and mutual respect that no force in any realm can break or corrupt. The daily rhythm of the chosen. Dawn in Valhalla arrives not with the harsh transition from darkness to light that marks mortal mornings, but with a gradual brightening that seems to come from within the warriors themselves. A gentle awakening that brings not the jarring shock of interrupted sleep, but the peaceful emergence from rest into renewed purpose. Like flowers opening to welcome the sun after a night of gentle rain, each soul refreshing itself in preparation for another day of growth and challenge and camaraderie. Eric wakes to find himself lying not in the crude battlefield conditions he knew in life, but upon a bed that seems crafted from clouds and starlight, soft enough to cradle his spirit, while firm enough to support the strength he will need for the day ahead. Around him, thousands of other warriors stir from their own rest, each one emerging from dreams that showed them glimpses of the lives they lived, the battles they fought, the choices they made that brought them to this eternal hall of honor and preparation. The first sound that greets the awakening Einherjar is not the harsh blast of a war horn, but the gentle chiming of bells that seem to ring from the very walls of Valhalla itself. A musical awakening that draws consciousness upward from the depths of rest, like fish rising to the surface of a clear mountain lake, eager to begin another day of existence in this realm, where every moment brings new opportunities for growth and understanding and fellowship. As Eric rises and looks around him, he sees his fellow warriors beginning their own preparations for the day. Some tending to weapons that gleam with supernatural sharpness, yet never lose their edge. Others, confidence of those who have found their true calling and pursue it with the passionate dedication that only comes from perfect alignment between desire and purpose. The morning meal appears upon the tables without ceremony or fanfare, as though the very act of gathering creates abundance. And Eric finds himself seated between a Celtic warrior whose red hair flows like flame and a Roman centurion whose disciplined bearing speaks of campaigns fought in lands so distant they seem like stories from another world entirely. Yet here, in Valhalla, their differences in origin and era matter less than their shared commitment to the ideals that brought them to this place, and their conversation flows as easily as the mead that fills their cups without ever seeming too empty. The food itself transcends anything Eric knew in mortal life, not simply in richness or flavor, but in the way it nourishes not just the body, but the spirit. Each bite, carrying essence that strengthens courage, enhances clarity of thought, deepens the bonds between warriors who share the same table and the same eternal purpose. The boar Saramnar, which provides meat for this feast, dies each morning only to be reborn each evening, its sacrifice willing and joyful, a symbol of the renewable nature of true valor and the endless capacity for regeneration that marks all things touched by the divine. After the morning feast comes training, but training unlike anything Eric experienced during his mortal years, exercises that push not just physical capabilities, but spiritual ones, combat that teaches not just how to defeat an enemy, but how to transcend the very concept of enmity, drills that build not just muscle and reflex, but character and wisdom, and the kind of deep, unshakable confidence that comes only from having faced every possible challenge and emerged victorious, not through luck or accident, but through genuine mastery. For the nature of existence in Valhalla allows for the experience of conflict and even apparent death, without the finality that such experiences carry in the mortal realm. A warrior struck down in the morning rises again before the evening meal, his understanding deepened by the experience of defeat, his skills sharpened by the necessity of facing worthy opponents who push him beyond his previous limits. As the day progresses toward evening, the training gives way to other pursuits. Storytelling sessions where warriors from different eras share their experiences and learn from one another. Philosophical discussions that explore the deepest questions about courage and honor and the meaning of existence itself. Artistic endeavors that express in music and poetry and visual form the beauty and terror and wonder of a life. Lived in service to ideals greater than mere survival or comfort. The evening meal surpasses even the morning feast in richness and fellowship, the mead flowing like liquid starlight, while conversations weave between tables like golden threads, connecting every warrior to every other in an ever-expanding tapestry of brotherhood and mutual respect. Stories are told that make the listeners feel as though they themselves lived through the adventures being described, who truly understand the value of a life lived with honor. Beyond Valhalla, other realms of rest. Yet even as the golden halls of Odin's domain represent the highest aspiration of warrior culture, and reward appropriate to the choices made during mortal existence. In the mist-shrouded realm of Helheim, ruled by the goddess Hel, whose face shows both beauty and decay in equal measure. dwell those who died of sickness or old age, whose passing came not in the heat of battle, but in the quiet surrender to forces beyond their control. Yet their realm is not the grim prison that later cultures would imagine, but rather a place of gentle twilight where souls find peace after lives of ordinary struggle, where the merchant who dealt fairly, the farmer who worked honestly, the mother who raised her children with love, all discover that virtue has its own rewards, different from, but no less meaningful than the glories reserved for those who died with weapons in hand. The halls of Helheim stretch through caverns lit by phosphorescent minerals that cast a soft blue-green glow over landscapes of surprising beauty, underground rivers that sing with voices like distant choirs, gardens where strange flowers bloom in the eternal twilight, tended by souls who find in cultivation and care the same satisfaction that warriors find in combat and conquest. Here time moves differently, measured not by the urgent demands of training and preparation, but by the slower rhythms of growth and reflection, allowing for contemplation and understanding that penetrates to depths impossible in the hurried world of the living. Hel herself, daughter of Loki, neither fully alive nor truly dead, serves as the perfect guardian for this threshold. Realm understanding as few others can the complexities of existence that defy simple categories of good and evil life and death, reward and punishment. Her judgment is not harsh but nuanced, recognizing that most lives contain elements of both light and shadow. Most choices involve compromises between competing goods rather than clear distinctions between right and wrong. And that wisdom often lies in accepting the full complexity of existence rather than trying to reduce it to simple formulas. Across the rainbow bridge that spans the gap between realms lies Folkvanger, the field of the slain that belongs to Freya, goddess of love and fertility and magic, where half of all warriors who die in battle come to rest in halls that rival Valhalla itself in splendor, though they differ in character as much as their respective rulers differ from one another. Where Odin's hall emphasizes discipline and preparation for cosmic conflict, Freya's domain celebrates the passionate intensity that drives warriors to acts of heroism, the fierce joy that finds expression in battle fury, and the wild exultation of victory. The warriors who feast in Folkvanger are no less worthy than those chosen for Valhalla, their valor recognized and rewarded with eternal fellowship in halls, where love and war intertwine like dancers moving to music that pulses with the very heartbeat of creation itself. Here the songs are wilder, the laughter more abandoned, the very air thick with the intoxicating energy of souls who lived their mortal lives with passionate commitment to ideals that burned within them like unquenchable flames. Freya herself moves among her chosen with the fluid grace of one who embodies the life force in all its manifestations, her presence bringing not the paternal warmth of Odin, Skregard, but the fierce maternal protectiveness of a lioness, defending her cubs, the sensual appreciation of a lover recognizing beauty wherever it peers, the profound wisdom of one who understands that creation and destruction are merely different aspects of the same cosmic dance. Her warriors serve not from duty alone, but from devotion, inspired by her example to heights of courage that transcend mere tactical considerations to become expressions of pure spiritual fire. Even the sea claims its own, and those who die in its embrace find themselves welcomed into the halls of Ran, whose nets gather drowned souls with the same care that fishermen use to harvest their catch, bringing them to underwater palaces where the dead feast on treasures claimed from sunken ships, while the sound of waves above provides eternal music for their celebrations. Here gather those whose courage was tested not on battlefields, but in the struggle against storm and tide, whose honor was proved not in combat with human enemies, but in the patient endurance required to wrest life from the unforgiving ocean. Rand's halls shimmer with the green-gold light that filters down through fathoms of water, their walls decorated with coral formations of impossible beauty and complexity, their tables laden with delicacies that only the sea can provide, their cups filled with mead that tastes of salt and freedom, and the wild joy of those who chose to make their living in partnership with forces greater and more dangerous than any human opponent. The souls who dwell here understand the ocean not as enemy but as teacher, its lessons harsh but invaluable to those with the wisdom to learn from its instruction, the twilight of the gods. But even these eternal halls, for all their glory and the perfect contentment they provide to their inhabitants, exist within a larger story that moves inexorably toward a conclusion written in the very foundations of creation itself. A final chapter that will test every virtue the halls have nurtured, every skill they have developed, every bond of fellowship they have forged in the crucible of shared purpose and mutual respect. For the Norse understanding of time is cyclical rather than linear, and every age of glory must eventually give way to a time of testing that will determine whether the values it represents deserve to survive into the age that follows. The signs of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, are subtle at first, like the barely perceptible shortening of days that marks the approach of winter, changes so gradual that they might be dismissed as imagination were it not for the growing sense of urgency that begins to permeate even the timeless halls of the afterlife. A quickening in the cosmic pulse that suggests vast forces beginning to stir after eons of slumber. Ancient enemies preparing to settle scores that have been accumulating since the first dawn of creation. In Valhalla, the daily rhythms of training and feasting continue as they have since the hall's founding. Yet now there is a new intensity to the warriors' exercises, a sharpening of focus that comes from the knowledge that their practice sessions are approaching their ultimate test, that the skills they have been perfecting through countless repetitions will soon be called upon in a conflict that will determine the fate of all existence. The sparring matches grow more fierce, the discussions more urgent, the songs more poignant with the awareness that this golden age of preparation is drawing to its inevitable close. Odin's ravens return from their daily flights across the 9 realms, with reports that grow more disturbing with each passing day. Tales of brothers turning against brothers, of oaths broken and sacred bonds dissolved, of the moral order that holds civilization together beginning to fray, like rope exposed to wind and weather. The wolves that chase the sun and moon grow ever closer to their prey. Their howling can be heard even in the depths of Valhalla when the night grows still, a sound that carries promise of the final hunt that will plunge all worlds into the darkness that precedes either death or rebirth. The great ash Yggdrasil, whose roots and branches connect all the realms of existence, begins to tremble with the strain of supporting realities that grow increasingly unstable as the forces of order and chaos prepare for their ultimate confrontation. Its leaves, which have remained green and vibrant since time began, start to show the first signs of autumn's approach. edges touched with gold and brown that speak of endings and transformations that can no longer be delayed or avoided. Serpent stirs in its sleep, its movements sending tidal waves crashing against shores. Throughout the mortal realm, while in the frozen wastes beyond the edge of the world, the wolf Fenrir tests the chains that bind him, finding them no longer quite as strong as they once were, no longer quite capable of containing the rage that has been building within him through ages of imprisonment. The very foundations of reality groan under the pressure of forces that have been held in check by divine will and cosmic law, but which grow stronger with each passing moment. Yet there is no despair in Valhalla, no panic or frantic preparation. For the Einherjar have always known that this moment would come, have trained their entire existence in the afterlife for precisely this eventuality. They greet the approaching twilight not with fear, but with grim satisfaction, the pleasure of warriors who have prepared thoroughly for a challenge worthy of their skills, who will finally have the opportunity to prove that their valor was not misplaced, their dedication not wasted, their fellowship not merely pleasant camaraderie, but the foundation of something strong enough to stand against the dissolution of everything they hold dear. The final battle, when it comes, will be fought not just with weapons of steel and iron, but with the accumulated wisdom of ages, the distilled essence of every virtue that the halls of the afterlife have cultivated and preserved, the living embodiment of the principle that some things are worth fighting for, even when victory seems of one age can become the beginning of another. If there are those willing to sacrifice everything to make such rebirth possible. Eternal echoes in the north. As our journey through the halls of the afterlife draws toward its close, we find ourselves not at an ending, but at a beginning, not at the conclusion of understanding, but at the threshold of deeper mysteries that reveal themselves only to those who have traveled far enough along the path of wisdom to recognize that every answer opens doorways to questions more profound than those that came before. Every insight illuminates vast territories of unexplored possibility that stretch beyond the reach of any single mind or lifetime to fully encompass. The northern lights dance across the sky above us, as they have since time immemorial, their shifting patterns of color and radiance serving as a reminder that the boundary between mortal and divine, between earthly and eternal, is far more permeable than our limited perspectives usually allow us to perceive. In their ethereal glow, we can almost see the outlines of those great halls, where warriors feast and train and prepare for challenges that transcend the merely physical, where souls discover that death is not an ending, but a graduation to levels of existence, where different laws apply and greater adventures await. Whether one believes in the literal truth of Valhalla and its sister realms, or sees them as magnificent metaphors for human aspirations toward transcendence, their power to inspire and console remains undiminished by the passage of centuries or the changing fashions of religious thought. They speak to something fundamental in the human spirit, the deep conviction that courage matters, that honor is not merely a social convention, but a reflection of cosmic principles that govern the universe. At its most essential level, that the choices we make in life echo through eternity with consequences that extend far beyond our ability to predict or control. The Norse understanding of fate and free will, embodied in the image of the Norns weaving their eternal tapestry, offers a vision of existence that is neither deterministic nor arbitrary, but rather structured like a vast musical composition in which individual notes derive their meaning from their relationship to the whole, where every life contributes its unique voice to a symphony that encompasses all of creation, where even the humblest soul plays a part that cannot be replaced or duplicated by any other. In this cosmic symphony, the warrior who dies with sword in hand plays one kind of melody, the farmer who tends his fields with patient dedication; another, the mother who raises her children with love; a third, but all are necessary. All contribute to the overall harmony. All find their proper place in halls designed to nurture and celebrate the particular virtues they developed during their time in the world of flesh and bone and mortal limitation. The myth of Valhalla does not diminish other forms of courage, but rather places them in context, showing how military valor relates to the broader spectrum of human excellence. Even now, as we drift toward sleep or meditation, or whatever form of rest calls to us in this moment, we can feel the presence of those ancient halls somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary perception, not as destinations we must earn through heroic deeds, but as possibilities that exist within us always, waiting for the moment when we choose to align ourselves with principles larger than our immediate desires. When we decide to live not just for ourselves, but for ideals that will outlast our physical existence and contribute to the ongoing story of consciousness, exploring its own infinite potential. The wind that blows across the northern territories carries with it echoes of voices raised in songs of triumph and fellowship, the laughter of souls who have discovered that death is not the enemy of life, but its completion, not the negation of meaning, but its fulfillment. These echoes reach us wherever we are, whatever our circumstances, reminding us that we too are part of something vast and eternal, that our choices matter not just for their immediate consequences, but for their contribution to the great work of creation that continues through ages and eras, transforming itself but never ending, always becoming something more magnificent than what came before. In the silence that follows the ending of stories, in the pause between one breath and the next, in the moment of perfect stillness that comes just before sleep claims consciousness and carries it into realms where different possibilities unfold, we can sense the presence of those halls where warriors feast eternal, not as distant dreams, but as aspects of reality that exist parallel to our everyday experience, separated by veils so thin that sometimes, when conditions are exactly right, we can glimpse through them to see wonders that words cannot adequately describe, but which the heart recognizes instantly as home, as the place where all journeys ultimately lead, as the destination that has been calling to us since the first moment we became aware of our own existence and began the long adventure of becoming who we were always meant to be. The northern lights continue their eternal dance above us, and in their shifting patterns we can read the promise that every ending is also a beginning, every death a doorway, every act of courage a thread woven into tapestries of meaning that will endure long after the last star burns out and the final chapter of this particular cosmic story reaches its conclusion, only to discover that it was merely the prologue to adventures even greater and more wonderful than anything we have yet imagined possible.